Hi there. Well, today I'm just going to turn a simple bowl. It's a very old, I think, piece of yew. Looks like it. Anyway, got a few cracks in it. Hopefully that won't be too bad. About 230mm across, about 60mm deep. So, interestingly, I've just put on the dovetail chuck jaws down here, which are the Axminster ones. It's interesting, there's a bit of run out on it. It's not immediately obvious until you get close to it, but I'll just put the step drive in and spin it up. I don't know whether you can see or not, but there is actually some yeah, difficult to tell without zooming right in, which is difficult with the cameras. But anyway, this is wobbling by a tiny amount when it's in the centre, which it probably shouldn't do. But anyway, it would obviously run better if it was in the more taper, but I shall have to live with it. Okay, I've got a series of these discs cut, and just allows you to eyeball the centre quite quickly. Okay, all togged up. Quite a bit of run out on this. About 600 or 700 revs, that's about all it will take at the moment. So with the outside roughly trued up, I'm just going to clean up the sides. I decided to use the carbide because it just seemed easier today. Don't normally, but thought I'd give it a go. Well, I stopped using the carbide after the overhang got a bit long and went back to normal tools. Feel much more comfortable doing that. 1/2 inch bowl gouge, still between centres, pull cut, sort of shear cut, just to get rid of the uneven surface. And just mark on the size of the mortise that's going to be used, and making sure, as always, that you only touch the one leg on the near side to you, not both legs, so avoid it stabbing you in the forehead. And then I'm just using a parting tool to create the initial profile of the dovetail jaws. And then on with doing some initial shaping, doing some more pull cuts. It's still between centres at this point, so just getting rid of the waste and getting an approximate profile for the bottom of the bowl. As you can see, there are some splits and knobbly bits in the yew, which of course is great because it makes it look really good, but this is about being quite careful now, doing the pull cut to ride the bevel across any of the bobbly bits so that you don't get a snag. And then a few pull cuts, some shear scraping, being careful across the split bits, just to try and get a better finish. Okay, well, I got the bottom roughly shaped, but there's a great chunk out of the wood and it's nastily split. So I'm just going to glue that up, putting some cellulose sanding sealer on first. I know it's not finished, that's not the point. The point is to stop the glues and the epoxies staining the wood irrevocably. Okay, that's just going to put some CA into the thin CA into the cracks. I decided I'm going super glue rather than epoxy, just for speed. By mixing the thin and the medium CA and the copper dust, and then using a lolly stick, you can create a slurry which you can then blend into the cracks. Keep doing it, keep topping it up, and eventually you'll fill up the holes. So once that's glued up and all the cracks are filled up and proud, you can then get it in the chuck and start turning it. The final finish of the outside will be done later. Just bring the centre up to position it firmly in the tenon. I've got quite good access to the back of the piece, so I'm just now going to turn it with my 3/8 bowl gouge to remove the excess material, and then also use a negative rake scraper just to finish it and finish the shape as much as I can anyway, down to where the chuck will block tool access. And then time to start pulling out the centre of the bowl. First off though, it's a bit uneven, so just going to dress it, and then straight on with pulling out the centre of the bowl. So after a little tickle in the middle, I'm just using the 3/8 bowl gouge and very quickly going along and just creating some cut marks so that I can use those to rub the bevel against to avoid it skating. People do it different ways. I tend to do it a different way each time, but this is quite a good way of doing it because the bevel pushes against the previous cut and doesn't require much force. The main thing is making sure that the tool is well over the back of the lathe when you're doing it, because you need to move the tool a lot in order to get a decent cut. And don't forget to check the depth, because in your excitement you don't want to create a funnel. So that's a homemade depth measurer, just a stick with a hole in it and a piece of bar that goes through the middle. Makes it a quick and easy and cheap depth measurer. I want to allow enough material for an undercut, so as you're getting closer to the finished thickness, you have to be mindful of the embedder tool control, a nice sharp tool, because this is when things can get complicated if you don't watch your depth and watch your thickness. So I'm now swapping onto a carbide, cut carbide, Ashton Revolution one, just to pull the undercut and start sort of getting that little profile so that when you pick the bowl up, it sets neatly and comfortably in the fingers. So I'm managing to get quite well around the corner with the straight tool, but to avoid an extreme convoluted angle or moving the tool rest right inside the bowl, I've just decided to go for the sort of bird's beak cutter, just to trim a nice simple undercut there with a high-speed steel scraper tool. With that mostly out of the way, some finishing cuts on the inside with a round nose negative rake scraper. And then as usual, I don't really know where I'm going with this, so I thought I'd do some beads on the top and some beads around the edge maybe. So I'm just marking out some lines with scraper before getting a spindle gouge and rolling a few little beads. I started with a 3/8 spindle gouge, but these are quite small beads, so I fairly rapidly swapped over to the 1/4 inch spindle gouge, which is ground with quite a sharp point to it, which makes it quite easy to get in and do these smaller details. Easy does it as the U can chip, so now just continue those beads around the corner with, again, the small spindle gouge. Then time for a quick sand up for all the grit. And then I'm going to highlight the beads with the burn wire. I think this is the quite thick one, which is the guitar bass string one. Plenty of pressure, and don't set fire to the workshop. And then on the faceplate side, using some scraps of Formica to burn in between the beads on the face. And it was skipping a bit on the Formica, so a quick cheat is just to top it up with a pencil. And then a final quick sand to just get rid of any rough bits, and then ready for some finishing on the inside. And this is my patent honey mustard. No, it's not really honey mustard, it's diluted cellulose sanding sealer, but the honey mustard little bottles do come in quite handy because they don't seem to dissolve, and you can get quite a lot of reuse out of them before you dump them and get a fresh one. I've used the sanding sealer diluted because the wood is really dry, and it's going to suck it up, otherwise it would streak if you're not careful. Okay, so I've finished the inside, polished it up, just got to take off the nub. So I'm only running at about 600 RPM because of it being cold jaws, so I'm going to keep the tailstock centre up for as long as possible, in order that I've got a nice, safe, secure grip on the bowl. Then a bit of blending in with some shear scraping, and then time to reprofile the foot. And And once the tailstock starts to get in the way, I've removed that, making sure that I've got a good strong grip with the cold jaws, and then finish off the profile on the bottom. I wanted to create a nice little raised foot and a flat centre, which I can do some texturing on, so I'm using a skewer as a scraper just to get it nice and smooth and flat. Now the outside has already had some finishing on it, some cellulose sanding sealer, so I've just cut that back all the way across and reapply some more before I do some texturing on the bottom. And this is the Crown small texturing wheel, held slightly downwards, about a 45-60 degree angle, with the bevel of the cutter at the top, trying to get it to take to create the little sort of three-legged Isle of Man in the middle. It's a bit touch and go whether you get it exactly the right angle. You really need to practice a lot. But then anyway, move it about, do it one way, do it another way, do it square on, and then you create a nice little interesting different set of patterns. And then just to help show off the texturing at the bottom, I'm rubbing in some copper gilt cream, which gets rubbed well in so it goes right into the texturing, and then burnished off so that it just leaves the wax filling the texture. And then a final finish with some bronze HSheen wax, just to sort of bring out the tones a little bit. It just adds a tiny little bit of sparkle to it, not very much, just a little bit, and it gives a nice finish. So there's the finished bowl. Not a great deal to it really, but looks quite nice, I think. Bit of detailing at the bottom. The undercut on the rim makes it very nice and handy to pick up, which is a nice feature to have. The little bit burning and the texturing from the U. Yeah, I think it's okay. What do you think?